What if I told you that the most iconic monster in horror cinema history isn't actually the killer in the movie that made him famous?
Right, it's a huge misconception.
It really is. You might think you know the lore, but let's reframe it for a second. Imagine this. What if the place meant for unforgettable summers, like the ultimate symbol of American youth and innocence, just became the scene of everyone's absolute worst nightmare?
Oh, that's such a chilling thought.
Right. Hidden deep within the woods lies a camp that's been abandoned for years, and every single attempt to reopen it just ends in blood.
It's the perfect setup.
It is. Well, welcome to Beyond the Plot, where unforgettable stories come to life. Today we're exploring the horror classic Friday the 13th.
This is going to be a fun one.
Definitely. So the mission of this deep dive is to basically pull you directly into the psychological trap of Camp Crystal Lake. We're going back to 1980, and not just to, look at a terrifying story, but to really deconstruct the exact mechanics of how this film manipulated its audience.
Yeah, how it completely weaponized isolation.
Exactly. And how it fundamentally rewired the whole architecture of the slasher genre. So you are going to be right here in the analytical seat with us as we explore the creeping dread and the suffocating weight of this deeply cursed piece of land. So step into the dark with us and let this tale unfold.
To really map out how this psychological trap is constructed, you have to look at the foundation it's built upon, right? Because the horror of the present day in this narrative, it's entirely anchored in an inciting tragedy. It's like this original sin that effectively poisons the soil. The film doesn't actually start in 1980. It pulls you way back to the summer of 1958.
And the atmosphere there is just, it's almost painfully idyllic. Like it's a warm July night. You hear these soft ambient sounds of 1950s Americana.
The crickets, the gentle breeze.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this portable radio playing a really gentle acoustic track. You can hear kids out of frame just sort of murmuring and playing. It is literally the visual and auditory definition of safety.
It lulls you right in.
It really does. But then the camera finds these two teenage counselors, Barry and Claudette, and they're doing what teenagers do, shirking their responsibilities to sneak away together.
Naturally.
Right. So they move past the canoes, slipping into the dark tree line to find a secluded spot. But this is where the cinematography just executes this massive pivot that, it completely redefined horror filmmaking.
Oh, absolutely.
The audience is suddenly shoved into the perspective of an unseen entity.
Yeah, the camera physically shifts its behavior here. You're no longer just this objective observer watching a movie. The lens becomes a subjective participant.
Which is so unsettling.
Extremely. You are positioned right behind this thicket of lacy vines. The framing is actually obstructed by leaves, and the movement is this slow, deliberate, really heavy tracking shot.
Wow.
You are literally forced to watch these two teenagers through the eyes of the killer.
I want to pause on that mechanism for a second because it feels incredibly invasive. Like, why make the audience complicit in the stalking? Doesn't that risk alienating the viewer right out of the gate? You're basically forcing the audience to become a voyeur to a murder.
It does border on the transgressive, for sure, but that's precisely why it hooks you. By forcing you into the killer's point of view, that prowler perspective, the director bypasses your empathy for a moment and taps into this primal, morbid curiosity.
That's a great point.
Yeah, you don't know who you are, but you know you possess power in this scene. It creates this unbearable tension because the audience knows an attack is imminent, but the victims are completely oblivious.
And the oblivious nature of it is just agonizing. Barry and Claudette are wrapped up in each other, and from this heavy breathing perspective, the camera creeps closer. Then a twig snaps.
Oh, that sound design.
The Foley work here is so sharp that snap cuts through the soft music like a gunshot. Claudette pulls back and she whispers into the dark, sensing a presence. But Barry just dismisses it.
Classic mistake.
Right, so the camera pushes in tighter, the score turns completely discordant, and then the violence just erupts. Claudette looks up, and her face twists in pure terror. A hatchet flashes into the frame.
It's so fast.
So fast. She drops. The camera whips with terrifying speed over to Barry, and this powerful, unseen hand grabs his throat, just pinning him against the bark of a tree.
Notice how the struggle is framed there, too. It's chaotic, it's tight, and highly specific. Barry fights back frantically, and he manages to knock a hunting knife away. But during this desperate scramble, a very distinct detail is shown to us.
Oh, the finger.
Yes, a little finger on the killer's hand is sliced off and falls right into the moss.
And Barry just stares up, completely paralyzed by shock. He lets out this soundless shriek as this unseen figure calmly retrieves the severed finger.
So cold.
It really is. And then the final strike lands. The audio cuts out completely. The screen just bleeds into this stark, blinding white. It's an incredibly aggressive way to establish that whatever haunts this place is ruthless, unstoppable, and entirely devoid of mercy.
And that white screen, it acts as this harsh temporal wipe. It strips away all that 1950s innocence and drops us directly into the cynical reality of the present day, which is Friday, June 13th.
Right.
The geographic shift is equally important here, because we aren't at the camp yet. We are miles away in a rural working-class town. This is where the narrative begins its modern descent, starting with a young woman named Annie.
And Annie is the quintessential symbol of optimism. She's in her late teens, bright-eyed, wearing jeans and hiking boots, her hair tied up in a long braid. She's this aspiring teacher who just wants to hitch a ride into the woods to help reopen Camp Crystal Lake.
She basically represents the future.
Exactly. But the second she steps into the local diner to ask for directions, she hits this absolute wall of atmospheric dread.
The diner scene is just a masterclass in establishing environmental hostility. The town operates as a barometer for the trauma of the past. When Annie mentions her destination, the ambient noise of the diner, the clinking coffee cups, the casual chatter, just evaporates.
You could hear a pin drop.
Right. The switchboard operator turns and flatly refers to it as Camp Blood. The local law enforcement murmurs about the cursed history, and a waitress explicitly tells Annie she wouldn't send a dog to that place.
I always look at this town as a massive architectural funnel. It reminds me of how a lobster trap works.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, because the opening is wide and easy to enter. You can walk into the diner, you can have a cup of coffee, but every step you take toward the lake, the funnel narrows. The town is the boundary line.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. The town represents the rational modern world, and the camp is this mythological, cursed space. The locals are basically the warning signs posted at the edge of the trap.
And Annie ignores every single sign. As she walks out to get a lift halfway with an oil truck driver, she is confronted by the town outcast, Crazy Ralph.
He is so unsettling.
He really is. He steps out from between two parked cars. The visual is deeply disturbing. He's muttering, wide-eyed, and he physically has dead rats hanging from his mouth.
It's gross.
So gross. Now he looks directly at this bright, optimistic girl and tells her she's doomed because of the date on the calendar.
Rationality demands that she turn around right then and there. But human optimism, and particularly youthful arrogance, just pushes her forward. The truck driver gets her as far as an abandoned crossroads before dropping her off.
Right.
So she is now effectively inside the narrowest part of your lobster trap. She accepts a second ride from a passing uncovered Jeep.
Once again, the cinematography traps the viewer. We are placed right behind the steering wheel. We do not see the driver's face.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah. And Annie is sitting in the passenger seat, beaming. She is talking a mile a minute, spilling her heart out about her love for kids, her dreams of teaching, her excitement to breathe life back into this old camp.
She's so innocent.
She's practically glowing with innocence. But then the vehicle blows right past the dirt road entrance to Camp Crystal Lake.
And the psychological manipulation here relies entirely on helplessness. Annie's confusion slowly morphs into panic. She asks the driver to stop, but the engine just revs higher.
Oh my gosh.
She begs. She physically reaches across the steering column to grab the ignition keys.
And the driver's hand lashes out, slapping her away with brutal force. And this is the horrifying payoff from the prologue, right? The hand that strikes her is missing its little finger.
Yes. It forces the audience to instantly connect the present danger to that 1958 massacre. The killer hasn't just returned. The killer never left.
Annie realizes she is trapped with a monster. Operating purely on adrenaline, she throws herself from the moving Jeep. She hits the asphalt, rolls into the brambles, tears her clothes, and just scrambles into the dense tree line.
It's such a desperate escape.
It really is. But the Jeep screeches to a halt. The driver calmly gets out. We watch Annie run until her lungs burn, stumbling through the thicket. Then she trips. She looks up, letting out a raw, guttural scream as the killer closes the distance.
And then it's over so quickly.
Yeah, a knife flashes in a blur of motion. The camera pulls back high into the trees as she collapses. A bird soars across the gray sky above, completely indifferent. The wilderness simply absorbs the violence.
Annie's death serves such a vital narrative function here. She is essentially the toll paid to cross the boundary. The trap has snapped shut, and now the narrative shifts its focus to the unwitting targets who are already inside the perimeter.
People already at the camp.
Exactly. The people who are actively trying to resurrect the very ground that demands this blood sacrifice.
Put yourself in their position. These aren't hardened survivalists or, typical horror movie archetypes who know they're in danger. They're basically just kids, hired hands, looking for a summer paycheck.
And the script really takes its time establishing them not just as fodder, but as distinct personalities layered with their own anxieties.
Yeah, like you have Steve Christie, the rugged, charismatic owner. It was his family's property that went bankrupt after the initial murders. So he's carrying this immense generational guilt and is just obsessed with clearing the camp's name.
Right.
Then you have Alice, who serves as the emotional core. She's guarded, highly intuitive, and she spends her downtime sketching these moody charcoal drawings of the dilapidated cabins. She already senses that something is wrong with the space.
Surrounding them are characters who bring entirely different dynamics to the group. Jack is the capable, athletic guy, deeply in love with his vibrant girlfriend, Marcy.
A great couple.
Yeah. And Bill is the reliable, pragmatic worker who seems to keep the logistics running. Brenda is sophisticated and confident, overseeing the archery range. And then there is Ned.
Ned is such an interesting inclusion. On the surface, he is the obnoxious prankster, always trying to get a laugh, always being a bit too loud.
Too much.
Exactly. But if you dig into the character notes, his relentless humor is actually a defense mechanism. He suffered from childhood polio, which left him with immense insecurities about his physical capabilities compared to guys like Jack or Bill. So he uses jokes as a shield.
But that shield ultimately alienates him from the rest of them. And the psychological brilliance of this middle act is how it weaponizes the mundane.
Oh, for sure.
The narrative spends a vast amount of time forcing the audience to watch these kids do grueling manual labor. Chopping stumps, scrubbing floors, painting long rows of canoes. They are completely physically exhausted.
And that exhaustion strips away their situational awareness. As a viewer, you are subjected to this creeping underlying anxiety because you know what they don't. Every ordinary action feels dangerous.
The suspense just builds and builds.
There's this brilliant moment where Alice is inside the uninsulated arts and crafts cabin. She's checking supply invoices. The camera positions the viewer outside, looking in at her through a dusty, cobwebbed window pane.
I love that shot.
It's incredible. Suddenly, Alice stops. She slowly turns her head, staring at the glass. She can feel the weight of someone's eyes on her. It's a terrifying reminder that the threat isn't hiking up the mountain. The threat is already inside the house.
And the tension finally breaches the surface when the group huddles around Steve's Jeep before he heads into town for supplies. The shadows are literally getting longer as the afternoon fades. The unspoken history of the camp is finally dragged out into the open.
Right, because Ned, trying to be edgy, mentions that the locals call the place Camp Blood. Alice is immediately rattled and asks why.
She wants to know.
Yeah, and Ned casually drops the lore. Like, oh, a young boy drowned, a couple of counselors were murdered in the late 50s, the water went bad, the place caught fire, and they never caught the person responsible.
Marcy laughs it off, claiming Ned is just trying to spook them. But the camera lingers on Alice's face. The past has explicitly touched the present now.
Think about the tragic irony here, too. These counselors are pouring their sweat and blood into building a safe haven, a sanctuary for children to learn and play, while they are literally sweeping the floors of a slaughterhouse.
It's so grim. And this is where the environment itself turns against them. The physical isolation, being miles away from town with no landlines hooked up and no cell phones existing in 1980, is about to be violently compounded by the weather.
A massive, suffocating thunderstorm rolls over the valley. The sky bruises purple and black, and the rain comes down in absolute sheets.
It's a deluge.
It really is. Yeah. This forces the counselors to abandon the open spaces of the camp and scatter into separate, isolated cabins. It creates a series of claustrophobic little boxes for the killer to systematically open.
The storm acts as the real catalyst for the terror. Before the killer even strikes again, the rudimentary infrastructure of the camp fails. The power grid shorts out. The camp is plunged into complete darkness.
And the ensuing sequence at the generator shed is pure, visceral anxiety. It doesn't even involve the killer, but it spikes the audience's heart rate so much.
Oh, the tension is insane.
Jack and Bill run out into the storm to fix the machinery. The shed is leaking. Water is pooling on the concrete floor. Jack steps into the puddle, grabs the starter cord, and yanks it. The heavy engine roars to life. Then he reaches up to pull the heavy-duty metal breaker switch.
And the wiring arcs.
Yes. Hundreds of volts streak directly through Jack's arm, grounding straight down through his wet shoes into the puddle. He is frozen there, screaming, his muscles locked onto the switch.
Horrifying.
Bill realizes if he grabs Jack, he'll die too. So in a split second of panic, Bill executes this flying kick, slamming into Jack's chest and knocking him free of the circuit. It is a near-fatal, terrifying accident.
I want to focus on why the director includes that scene, though. It establishes a baseline of environmental hostility. It tells the audience that the camp itself is lethal. Meanwhile, back in the main kitchen, the group is trying to manage their anxiety by the dim glow of propane lanterns. And Ned attempts to break the tension with a prank.
Right. While Marcy is preparing food, Ned suddenly gasps. He grabs his throat. His face goes crimson, his eyes bulge, and he collapses onto the wooden floor, thrashing and kicking over chairs.
It's so believable in the moment.
The panic in the room is absolute. Jack and Bill rush in, they flip him over, preparing to do the Heimlich maneuver, and Ned just stops. He flashes this huge, obnoxious grin and goes, da-da.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the boy who cried wolf trope.
Exactly. Wait, I mean, it goes beyond just a trope. It completely shatters the group's trust in him. Jack is furious. Marcy is disgusted. Even Alice, who is usually empathetic, tells him to knock it off.
He really crossed a line.
He did. Ned realizes he grossly misread the room. The humor didn't protect him, it isolated him. Embarrassed, he mutters an apology and wanders out the screen door into the storm all alone.
He walks down to the edge of the lake. The rain is coming down in sheets. He looks up and sees a dark human shape standing in the shadow of one of the cabins.
Oh, no.
Trying to make amends for his behavior, he walks toward the figure, asking if they need help out of the rain. The camera holds on the darkness as Ned steps into it, and that is the last time he is seen alive.
With Ned gone, the group continues to fracture. Jack and Marcy, seeking an escape from the tension, make a run for one of the empty, dark bunkhouses to be alone. They are lying on a camp bed, illuminated by a single flashlight pointing up at the ceiling. And this is where Marcy shares something deeply unsettling.
She describes a recurring nightmare she's had since childhood, which is specifically triggered by thunderstorms. She calls it the shower dream.
The imagery she uses is so poetic and grim. She tells Jack that in the dream, the rain comes down heavy, sounding like pebbles hitting a tin roof. She tries to cover her ears, but the sound just burrows deeper.
It's so visceral.
Yeah. And then the rain stops being water. It turns into thick, red blood, washing down the glass in little rivers. To inject that specific nightmarish imagery right before the violence truly begins is such a brilliant way to prime the audience's subconscious.
It serves as an emotional anchor for the audience. As Jack and Marcy become intimate on the bottom bunk, the camera performs an incredibly subversive trick. It loses interest in the human connection entirely. It tilts away from them and focuses on a single droplet of dark liquid leaking through the wooden planks of the ceiling.
The camera slowly pans upward, following the vertical strut of the bunk bed as this thick liquid dribbles down the wood. The audience realizes what it is way before the characters do.
It's agonizing to watch.
And then a sudden blinding flash of lightning outside the cabin illuminates the top bunk.
Lying there, silently bleeding through the mattress, is Ned. His throat has been completely laid open.
Jack and Marcy have been making love inches beneath the fresh corpse of their friend. The violation of safety is absolute, but they don't know. Jack eventually drifts off to sleep, oblivious to the blood overhead. Marcy, needing to use the restroom, grabs her flashlight, pulls her jacket over her head, and runs out into the torrential rain toward the communal bathroom facility.
What follows is widely considered a masterclass in elongated suspense. The architecture of the bathroom is crucial here. It's a wide, echoing space lined with mirrors, sinks, and a row of enclosed shower stalls. It is literally designed to reflect light and amplify sound.
The Foley work in the sequence is what makes it so unbearable. The heavy drumming of the rain on the roof, the squeak of Marcy's wet shoes on the tile. She goes into a toilet stall. She's reading crude graffiti carved into the wood. Suddenly, a noise echoes through the facility.
And the sound design intentionally blurs the line between environmental noise and human interference.
Yes. Marcy calls out for Jack. Silence. She convinces herself it's just the wind. She walks over to the row of sinks and turns the rusted handle. The water sputters and flows. Again, she hears a sharp noise.
Your heart just drops.
The screen door to the shower area is banging open and shut in the draft. She smiles, shaking her head. She assumes Jack or Ned is hiding in the dark, setting up another stupid prank.
She begins to hunt for the punchline, essentially. She hears a rhythmic dripping sound coming from the showers. She walks down the line.
Put yourself in that room. The flashlight beam is cutting through the dark. She grabs the heavy plastic curtain of the first shower and rips it back. Nothing, just a leaky spigot. She moves to the second stall.
The anticipation is killer.
She's smirking now. She reaches out, grabs the curtain, and playfully calls out, "Ollie, Ollie, and free!" She throws it open, empty tile. She lets out a long, shuddering breath, whispering to herself that she's letting her imagination run wild.
She turns her back on the open room and faces the mirrors above the sinks. The tension has been stretched to the absolute breaking point.
And then the rubber band snaps. A massive shape lunges from a utility closet directly behind her. The flashlight catches the steel edge of a camp hatchet.
It's terrifying.
Marcy barely has time to scream before the hatchet embeds itself into her skull. The flashlight clatters to the wet tile, spinning wildly and casting chaotic shadows on the walls as she falls. But I want to break down why this specific kill is so legendary. Because the killer doesn't overpower her with brute strength. The killer uses the environment. The thunderstorm completely drowns out her brief scream. The darkness of the unlit facility hides the killer perfectly. The camp is doing half the work for them.
That touches on the core philosophy of suspense versus gore. The actual violence, the hatchet strike, lasts maybe 2 seconds. But the horror is the 2 agonizing minutes of watching Marcy slowly pull back those empty shower curtains.
Yes, exactly.
The audience knows the killer is in the room. The anticipation of the violence forces the viewer's imagination into overdrive, making the final release almost a horrific relief.
With Ned, Jack, and Marcy gone, the core group is rapidly shrinking. But the remaining counselors, Alice, Bill, and Brenda, have no idea a massacre is occurring just a few cabins away. And the film then executes a brilliant piece of dramatic irony by cutting away from the camp entirely.
All right, we jump back to the town. Steve Christie, the camp owner who left hours ago, is sitting in a brightly lit, warm diner. He's drinking coffee, charming the waitress, completely insulated from the nightmare unfolding on his property.
His journey back is an exercise in frustration that slowly turns fatal. He leaves the diner, but his Jeep stalls out on a flooded rural road. He ends up catching a ride with the cynical local police officer, Tierney.
Their conversation is really interesting.
It is. The dialogue here is fascinating. Tierney is driving through the storm, explicitly blaming the full moon for the chaos. He talks about how it alters human behavior, drives people crazy, spikes the homicide rates. It's a very grounded, almost procedural view of violence.
Right.
But then Tierney gets a call over the radio about a massive pileup on the interstate. He has to turn around, dumping Steve on the side of a muddy road in the pitch black.
Steve is forced to walk the final stretch to the camp on foot. He is trudging through the mud and rain. As he finally reaches the perimeter of the camp, a flashlight beam hits his face.
And we don't see who is holding the light. Steve just squints, looks incredibly relieved, and says, "Hi, I'm sure glad to see you. Did you get caught in the rain too?"
He recognizes them.
He recognizes this person. He trusts them. And the immediate reward for that trust is a hunting knife driven directly into his stomach. Steve collapses into the mud, and the architect of the slaughter simply steps over his body.
The narrative then snaps violently back to the camp, focusing on Brenda. The killer's methodology begins to shift here. It's no longer about silent execution. It becomes about psychological degradation.
It turns sadistic. Brenda is alone in her cabin, wearing thin yellow pajamas, trying to read a magazine. The wind is howling. Suddenly, she hears a sharp metallic sound. Tap, tap, tap against the window pane.
It's a deliberate provocation.
She throws on a rain slicker, grabs a heavy flashlight, and bravely steps out onto the porch. She sweeps the beam around and finds the source of the noise. Someone has taken a kitchen knife, tied it to a piece of twine, and hung it from the roof eaves.
So creepy.
The wind is blowing it against the glass. Brenda is furious. She immediately assumes it's Ned, taking his pranks to an absurd, creepy new level. She snaps the string, goes back inside, and the generator finally dies completely. The single light bulb pops and goes dark.
Frustrated and cold, she lights a small propane lantern. She decides she's had enough and just wants to go to sleep. She walks to her bed, reaches down, and pulls the heavy coverlet back.
Resting squarely on her pillow is a heavy camp hatchet, and the blade is smeared with fresh, dark blood. The acting in this moment is incredible. You watch her brain try to process what she is seeing.
The realization is just dreadful.
The fury turns into pure, freezing panic. She bolts. She runs out of the cabin, abandoning her slicker, sprinting into the torrential rain in bare feet and pajamas. She doesn't run to the other cabins. She runs for the wide, open expanse of the softball field.
Because the field offers visibility. It is the antithesis of the claustrophobic cabins. But the killer has already calculated this trajectory.
As Brenda runs onto the muddy diamond, slipping and sliding, a heavy switch is thrown somewhere in the distance. The massive industrial stadium lights mounted on the telephone poles roar to life, flooding the entire field in blinding, stark white light.
The environment is weaponized yet again. She isn't illuminated to be saved, she is illuminated to be exposed.
Brenda is totally disoriented by the glare, shielding her eyes. She stumbles out of the light into the deep shadow behind third base. The camera holds on that empty, dark space for several agonizing seconds.
Then you just hear the rain.
All you hear is the rain. And then the silence is shattered by a terrifying, prolonged scream that echoes across the lake.
Inside the main lodge, Alice and Bill hear that scream. Alice looks out the window, wiping the condensation away, and sees the distant glow of the softball field lights suddenly snap off, plunging the camp back into total darkness.
Let's stop and think about the sheer terror of that specific moment. Alice and Bill step out onto the porch. The rain is pouring down, the camp is dead quiet. You have to imagine the realization crashing down on them.
That they aren't alone.
Right. Someone is out there. Someone who controls the power grid. Someone who is playing cat and mouse in the dark.
This brings us to the mechanics of isolation. The killer is systematically dismantling their reality. They are turning the tools of the camp, the hatchets, the circuit breakers, the darkness itself, into instruments of terror. It's designed to induce a psychological breakdown before the physical kill.
Alice and Bill try to investigate, but they find nothing. They barricade themselves in the main lodge. Eventually, Bill realizes they need to try the generator one last time. He leaves Alice behind.
Big mistake.
Huge mistake. And when he doesn't return, Alice goes looking for him. What she finds in the generator shed is horrifying. Bill is dead, pinned to a wooden door by several archery arrows.
With Bill's death, the narrative pushes Alice into the ultimate crucible. She is the final survivor. She is completely alone, trapped on a cursed piece of land, surrounded by the bodies of her friends.
She retreats to the main lodge, but the killer throws Brenda's body through the glass window, shattering her last shred of perceived safety.
That jump scare is legendary.
It really is. Alice flees the cabin, running blindly into the night, eventually collapsing by the shallow, muddy waters of Crystal Lake. The rain begins to let up. The dawn is threatening to break. And this is when the architect of the nightmare finally reveals themselves.
The climax of this narrative completely detonates audience expectations. By 1980, the emerging rules of the slasher genre suggested the killer would be a hulking, masked behemoth, like a Michael Myers type. But when a vehicle pulls up to the lake, the person who steps out is not a monster.
No, it's a middle-aged woman in a chunky knit sweater, Mrs. Voorhees. She looks like a suburban grandmother. Alice is so relieved, so broken, she literally runs toward her, sobbing, begging for help.
It's heartbreaking.
But Mrs. Voorhees doesn't comfort her. She begins to speak, and the words that come out of her mouth are dripping with a toxic, ancient grief.
She begins to monologue about a young boy named Jason, her son. She details how he shouldn't have been in the water because he wasn't a good swimmer. She explains with a cold fury how the counselors weren't paying attention.
They were distracted.
Right, they were off sneaking around, making love, while her little boy drowned in the lake.
The trauma of 1958 is fully realized here. Mrs. Voorhees' face begins to twitch. The grief contorts into absolute, unhinged rage. She pulls a massive hunting machete from her vehicle and lunges at Alice.
It's such a shocking shift.
It really is. And I want to push back on this reveal for a second. Because for decades, critics have debated this choice. Is revealing the killer to be a middle-aged woman in a sweater actually a profound exploration of grief, or is it just a cheap parlor trick?
That's a fair question.
Like a twist ending designed solely to shock the audience because it's the last demographic they would suspect. Was this deep, or was it just a gimmick?
It's a valid challenge, but the text supports a much deeper reading than a mere gimmick.
Yeah.
If you examine the psychological profile of Pamela Voorhees, she is profoundly tragic. The horror isn't just that she's killing people, it's why she's killing them.
Right, the motivation.
She suffered the unnatural, unbearable loss of a child due to the sheer negligence of the people trusted to protect him. Her mind simply could not process that grief. It shattered. The brilliance of the choice is that she isn't a mustache-twirling villain. She is the physical embodiment of a haunting.
And the script cements that fractured psychology during the fight. As she swings the machete at Alice, her face twisting in rage, the voice that comes screaming out of her throat isn't her own.
Exactly. It's the voice of a terrified little boy.
Mommy, Mommy, kill her, Mommy.
It's bone-chilling.
It is deeply, fundamentally disturbing. She is acting as a physical vessel for her dead son.
In her shattered reality, Jason isn't gone. He is commanding her from beyond the grave. She refuses to let the past die, and because of that, she believes she must slaughter the future, which is what Alice, Annie, and the other young counselors represent.
The physical confrontation that follows is a masterclass in grounded, messy survival. It isn't a slickly choreographed martial arts sequence. It takes place in the waist-high, freezing muck of the lake.
It's so visceral.
Alice is exhausted, slipping on rocks, fighting for breath. Mrs. Voorhees is swinging this massive, heavy blade wildly, driven by pure adrenaline and psychosis.
It is desperate and animalistic. Mrs. Voorhees tackles Alice under the water, screaming in Jason's voice, trying to drown her the exact way her son drowned.
Alice manages to grab a floating aluminum canoe paddle. She uses it like a staff, blocking a vicious swing of the machete that nearly shears the metal in half. She kicks Mrs. Voorhees away, surging out of the water.
It's a fight for her life.
In the chaos, Alice manages to secure the machete. She spins around, and with one desperate, wild swing, fueled by the sheer will to survive, she decapitates our tormentor.
The violence is abrupt and final. The head flies off into the reeds. The body stands for a surreal, suspended second, hands still grasping at the air, before collapsing heavily into the bloody water.
Alice drops the blade. She wades numbly back to the shore, climbing into a canoe, pushing off into the center of the lake, entirely catatonic.
It's such a haunting image.
It really is. And this brings us to the aftermath and the colossal crater the story left on modern cinema. It's morning. The storm has passed. The cinematography gives us these beautiful, haunting, wide shots of the camp.
The contrast is striking.
The sun is sparkling on the calm surface of Crystal Lake. Alice is eventually found by police, walking numbly down a dirt road wrapped in a blanket. When a state bureaucrat asks her if she's all right, she just stares through him and whispers, "Help me."
The film leaves the audience with a profound sense of melancholy. The final image in the script is a long shot of the water. The canoe lies half sunken in the shallows. A single paddle drifts lazily in the current. The script notes state, "The lake has swallowed its secret."
But it didn't stay swallowed, did it? This movie didn't just to scare people, it built a blueprint. By taking the ultimate symbol of American innocence, the summer camp, a place of first crushes, learning to tie knots, gaining independence from your parents and violating it, the film created a new kind of terror.
It solidified the mechanics of the final girl trope. Alice survives not because she's a trained fighter, but because she possesses a fundamental intuition and resilience that the others lack.
That's a great point.
The film proved that isolation, a restricted setting, and a rising body count could tap into the cultural anxieties of a generation transitioning from the idealism of the 70s to the darker, more cynical 80s.
The camp itself becomes the most enduring character. It's a cursed piece of land. No matter how many times a guy like Steve Christie comes along to clear the stumps and paint the cabins, the foundation is rotten. You cannot just put a fresh coat of paint on a tragedy and pretend it didn't happen.
And that is the terrifying thematic core we have to confront. Places remember, Crystal Lake couldn't be reopened because trauma is not easily scrubbed away.
Wow, yeah.
When individuals, or societies for that matter, refuse to process their darkest, most agonizing moments, those moments don't just fade. They ferment. They mutate in the dark, and eventually they rise from the depths to pull the present under the surface.
That's a chilling thought to leave on. You've been listening to Beyond the Plot. If you enjoyed this journey into horror, leave a like and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Until next time, go beyond the plot.